So when we gave, I guess we can go back maybe till end of October, we gave our pre-assessment, a New York State passage that we all decided upon that we thought was rigorous enough, and the question really reflected what we want students to be able to do in our ELA content and on the state test, of course. And we were able to look at some exemplars and some grading rubrics and what was given a 2, what was given a 1, and what was given a 0. And then we all decided on one that we were going to give. So the first thing we want to talk about is when we gave our pre-assessment, I can't recall the title of that.
The
kid one, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jean.
Convincing your parents, yeah.
Yes, that you want a kitten, right?
You get a kitten.
And that text-based question, let's just have maybe a quick conversation about some of the gaps that we saw, how we came up with our instructional goal. So does anybody recall some of the gaps that we saw when we actually gave it and then brought it to the PLC and started grading it?
A lot of our kids had trouble restating the question in order to focus them in their answer.
Okay.
I think we also identified that a lot of them didn't really go back and find exact evidence in the text to support it.
It goes based on what they believe to be true.
Yeah, right. So that was also the other part. So even if for the kids that were able to restate, they weren't then able to go back and support it with exact text evidence.
The other gap that we had noticed was the gap in the questioning technique as compared to the questions that we give our students.
The rigorousness, if that's even a word.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, and even like when I did restate in the classroom, really teaching students that the restate should be a statement and not ending it with because I was finding that when I gave the pre-assessment, a lot of them were saying because, blah, 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 and then they were done. I have a full sentence, I answered it, I'm done. But in our book, that wasn't, and in the state's terms, if they asked for 2 details, that wasn't always lending itself to 2 details or a 2. And I think by looking at our pre-assessment, we came up with our implementation plan, and we noticed that 50% of students scored, well, there were 96 students altogether through all of our classes. 50% of them scored a 2, 44% of them scored a 1, and 5% scored a 0. So we wanted to increase that by, I think we decided on, what was our final, is it 20%? 20%.
Yeah, up to
So we wanted to go to 50 to 70%.
Mm-hmm.
In talking about that instructional goal, we talked about our plan. So, Laura, you want to talk a little bit about the plan?
Sure. So the plan that we all agreed on was to decompose and break down raft and spend a good chunk of time and instruction on each component of raft, starting with the restate, and we really spent a nice week on the restate. We gave students teacher-generated questions just to model. We also connected it to a read aloud and had students answer a question restating. We then added on the answer, and the same process. We used a read aloud to model and to have the students also practice. Dawn was kind enough to create a document for that. We're trying to also teach our students to write RA on the side and check off as they complete each one of those components. And where we are now is at the 4 example.
So I think then we decided last PLC that when we got to the 4 example, that's when we were going to teach the evidence-based terms. So how many or how less you wanted to teach is up to you for your individual students. But so that's something that we wanted to focus on this week into next week. And in order to do that, and going back to like what some of us were seeing with the pre-assessment, that the questions are a lot more rigorous than some of the questions given in the ELA modules, Katie, the IL, has created a bank of materials for us to use that I think we could begin using now that we have the R, the A, and now the F, and we'll be getting to T. So we want to take some time to kind of just share with you where you can find them, what she has created, and that they really are a bank of high-level questions that you should be, I think, using
Accessing,
or, accessing,